Part 6. The Wooden Bowl, Folk Wisdom from Japan. In the treasury of Japanese wisdom, one does not only find lofty philosophies hidden in Buddhist scriptures or ancient texts. Sometimes, from the most ordinary of objects, one can step into the depth of human consciousness. A simple wooden bowl, rustic and unadorned, can become a gateway into the world of contentment, gratitude, and letting go. This section unfolds stories surrounding the image of the wooden bowl in Japanese culture and spirituality, where humility and wisdom intertwine, illuminating timeless values. 6.1. The Monk's Humble Bowl, a lesson beyond time. In Hyogo Prefecture, toward the end of the Edo period, there stood a small temple named Myazenji, nestled beneath the silent shade of pine forests. Eloquent teachings, but for his very presence, quiet, genuine, and warm. And the symbol most closely tied to him, throughout those decades, was not a statue or an ancient scripture, but a humble, wooden bowl. That bowl was not remarkable in appearance. It had been carved from a block of pine by a poor village carpenter. Its surface was rough, darkened with age, edged with small cracks along its grain. Compared to the refined porcelain bowls from Kyoto, or the famous raku earthenware, this wooden bowl was worth almost nothing. Yet to Jogen, it was a treasure, for it carried a meaning only those who lived in true contentment could perceive. The first day Jogen received the bowl was a spring morning. The carpenter had come to the temple carrying a small cloth bundle. Bowing, "Bowl," he smiled gently. He lifted it with both hands as if holding a sacred gift, recognizing the sincerity within it. From that day, he vowed to use the bowl for life, reminding himself that value lies not in form, but in the heart's truthfulness. As the years passed, Jogen used the bowl for every meal, simple rice, wild greens, sometimes just pickled radish. Yet he welcomed each bite with gratitude. He often told his disciples, "This bowl does not only hold food, it holds the kindness of those who give, the nourishment of the earth and sky, and the opportunity to cultivate our practice." One day, a young disciple asked curiously, "Master, why do you not use a finer bowl? A revered monk like you deserves something more dignified. This bowl seems so ordinary." Jogen did not answer immediately. He set the bowl on the wooden floor and watched as morning light streamed through the doorway, glinting off its aged surface. Then he said softly, "You see an old bowl, but I see a lesson within it. It teaches me that everything has its worth, if only we look with compassion. It teaches sufficiency, the importance of not chasing after outward splendor. More than that, it reminds me that practice is not for recognition, but for nurturing authenticity." The disciple fell silent. In the humble bowl's simplicity, he suddenly glimpsed a vast sky, where true depth hides in the unadorned. Word of the monk's wooden bowl spread beyond the temple. Villagers told their children, "Be content with little. Do not let greed enslave you." Like Master Jogen, who found fullness in a single wooden bowl, merchants leaving the temple carried the story as a reminder that wealth is fleeting, while humility brings peace. When Jogen passed away, his disciples gathered by his bedside in tears. He left no gold, no manuscripts, only a final request. "Keep this bowl. Do not revere it as a rare treasure. Let it remind you that the way is found in ordinary life, in each grain of rice, in each drop of water. When you cherish the simple, you touch wisdom itself." After his passing, the bowl was placed reverently in the temple hall. Pilgrims traveled far just to see it. Some said that upon gazing at it, their restless hearts grew still, their desires lost their shine. Others wept, recalling how often they had dismissed small contentment. Teachers shared it with students to cultivate gratitude. Even in modern Tokyo boardrooms, leaders occasionally invoked Master Jogen's wooden bowl as a metaphor. That lasting strength does not lie in dazzling ambition, but in nurturing honesty and simplicity. Thus, the wooden bowl became more than a vessel. It became a timeless symbol, a quiet echo of a culture that honors thee. A wooden bowl, perhaps cracked or darkened with age, speaks to us of time, impermanence, and the power of acceptance. The Japanese aesthetic of wabi-sabi is key to understanding the meaning of the wooden bowl. Wabi-sabi does not glorify perfection, but rather discovers beauty in imperfection, in roughness, and in the marks of time. Thus, an old wooden bowl is not something obsolete to be discarded, but a testimony of living, of silent companionship between people and their tools. It reminds us that happiness does not lie in owning more, but in cherishing what we already have. From the perspective of humility, the wooden bowl also becomes a teacher. In society, people often strive to assert themselves through wealth, power, or distinction. But the wooden bowl delivers that humility makes it easier to connect, to share, and to see beyond the veil of ego. Many Japanese Zen masters taught that whenever they lifted a wooden bowl to eat, they did not only see rice or vegetables. They saw the labor of the farmer, the rain and sunshine, the caring hands of the donor. Thus, the wooden bowl becomes a mirror reflecting gratitude. And when one lives in gratitude, humility arises naturally. This humility helps us let go of endless cravings, comparisons, and the constant hunger of desire. Perhaps the most important teaching of the wooden bowl is the art of letting go of possession. In modern society, people are often caught in the cycle of accumulation, wanting more, better, newer. Yet the more they accumulate, the more afraid they are of losing, the more enslaved they become to their possessions. A simple wooden bowl poses the question, how much do we truly need to live? A meal, a place to rest, a peaceful heart, perhaps that is already enough. By releasing the need to possess excessively, we taste the sweetness of freedom. In Japanese tradition, there is a practice called oryoki, just the right amount. It is the way Zen monks eat using a set of bowls, with moderation and mindfulness, without waste. Each bowl in the oryoki set represents a part of life, and the way they are used reflects the spirit of sufficiency. Here, the wooden bowl is not merely a food container, but a measure of awareness. Eating enough, living enough, letting go of excess. This is the essence of true happiness. The story of letting go of possession extends beyond material things into consciousness itself. The Japanese believe that when the mind is crowded with greed, the inner space becomes suffocating. But when we let go, and thus, in letting go, we truly embrace what is essential. This meaning becomes even clearer in a polarized and conflicted world. The wooden bowl reminds us that the path to peace does not lie in amassing power or weapons, but in humility, in listening, and in releasing selfishness. When individuals can live simply and contentedly, ruthless competition softens, and compassion finds room to grow. Today, in modern life, we may not often use wooden bowls, yet their meaning remains alive in every choice we make. Each time we pause before a luxurious item and ask, do I truly need this? To preserve inner peace, we are holding a wooden bowl within our soul. From a humble household item, the wooden bowl has become a symbol of wisdom. It teaches us that simplicity is not deprivation, but a conscious choice. That humility is not weakness, but enduring strength. That letting go is not loss, but liberation. In the quiet presence of the wooden bowl, we glimpse a whole universe of stillness, where we may return to find a peace no wealth could ever buy. 6.3. When enough is already abundant. The lesson of minimalist living in a chaotic century. In today's world, where supermarkets overflow with goods, where social media constantly floods our eyes with images of luxury, and where owning more seems to be the measure of success, the story of a simple wooden bowl resounds like a bell of awakening. It reminds us of a philosophy that has existed for thousands of years. True happiness does not come from having more, but from knowing what is enough. He who is not content with little will not be content with much. In India, sages living in the forest proclaimed that only by letting go of false needs could one touch true peace. Even in the Bible, one finds the reminder that wealth does not guarantee a tranquil soul. Across cultures, humanity has encountered this lesson repeatedly, only to forget it and then to relearn it anew in our materialistic age. The rise of minimalism in the West in recent years is simply a modern expression of this ancient wisdom. Young people in New York, Berlin, or Sydney are growing weary. A phone buzzing with hundreds of notifications each day, a head constantly spinning with unfinished tasks. All of this overloads us just as much as a cluttered room. And just as we must clear out a Many people who have gone through major turning points in life testify that it was only after losing much that they discovered the true value of enough. An American man who went bankrupt after gambling away his savings in the stock market recalled that, when he sat in a tiny rented apartment with only a handful of belongings left, he finally felt free, no longer bound by possessions. Japanese monk. The more rustic, the more simple, the less it clings, the greater its strength. And that strength is not to dominate or conquer, but to let go and be free. It is a quiet, the true beauty of each item. A concise piece of writing can touch the heart more deeply than elaborate words. A humble person may earn greater respect than one who flaunts loudly. Thus, enough does not mean poverty, but rather an inner richness. Interestingly, when we live by enough, we connect more naturally with others. A content person does not envy friends, does not look down on those below, does not compete relentlessly to prove their worth. Instead, they listen, understand, and share. In a world fractured by division and rivalry, the spirit of lavish banquet, an old shirt, worn for years but full of memories, may be more precious than a brand new luxury item. An afternoon spent quietly reading by the window may bring longer-lasting joy. Rather, it invites us to ask, how much do we truly need to be happy? And when we answer honestly, we often realize that the number is far smaller than society leads us to believe. Today's world faces crises of overconsumption, waste, and an environment devastated by unchecked desire. Against this backdrop, minimalist living is not just a personal choice, but also an act of responsibility toward the planet. Each time we choose enough over more, we ease the burden on Earth. Thus, the philosophy of the wooden bowl is not merely spiritual guidance, but also a path to a sustainable future. In the end, perhaps the greatest gift of enough is this. Once we learn to live with it, we stop searching for happiness outside and begin to discover it within. When we no longer chase more too, but a mirror reflecting a way of life that our modern world desperately needs. It whispers to us that when enough, we already have abundance. And when we know enough, we truly begin to live. Beings, from winding rivers and dense forests to the vast coastlines, tales of animals listening to the Dharma and experiencing transformation have been preserved for centuries. These stories, simple yet deeply moving, remind us that the path of awakening excludes no living creature. In this part, we encounter a remarkable tale of a carp, seemingly just another creature of the river, yet remembered as a symbol of transcendence beyond the limits of its form. 7.1. The Riverbank and the Awakening Song of a Carp. Along the border between Thailand and Laos, where the Mekong River surges past rocky banks, people still tell an ancient story about a most unusual carp. They call it with reverence Mapla Cam, Mother Golden Carp. It is said that during the lifetime of the Dharma talk, the atmosphere was serene. Only the gentle lapping of water and the compassionate voice of the Buddha filled the air. When he began teaching about impermanence, that everything in life, every word of the Buddha's teaching, it was as though the sound of Dharma was not merely for human ears, but a rhythm of truth resonating with the hearts of all beings. The story tells that in that no one dared to catch golden carp in that part of the river. It became a sacred symbol, remembered as a being who touched awakening through listening. The tale spread across generations. Where human life is deeply intertwined with rivers, it feels both natural and wondrous that a carp should become the center of such a teaching. Rivers here are not only lifelines, but also carriers of sacred stories. And the carp, symbol of perseverance and transformation in Asian culture, was the perfect vessel for transmitting a Dharma truth. Symbolically, the carp is often associated with leaping over the dragon gate, transforming from the ordinary into the extraordinary. The story of Mapla Cam echoes this. When the mind becomes still, when the ear truly listens, even a carp can transcend its fate and touch the light of awakening. This aligns with the Buddha's words in the Anguttara Nikaya, wherever one may be, whether human or otherwise, those who hear and practice the Dharma can turn toward liberation. The carp story is thus not mere legend, but a folk embodiment of this truth, passed on through generations. Today, pilgrims who visit riverside temples along the Mekong, and desire. We thrash and struggle, forgetting how to pause. Yet sometimes, it only takes a single moment of true listening. Listening to nature, listening to our inner voice, listening to the teachings of wisdom, for peace to arise, just as it did for the carp of long ago. Perhaps this is what the people of Southeast Asia wish to preserve by keeping alive the tale of Mapla Cam. That one need not be a saint, nor escape one's condition, but only nurture an open heart and a listening spirit. In that openness, any being, human or otherwise, can touch the light of enlightenment. Listen. 7.2. Every being has the potential for enlightenment. In the history of Buddhist transmission, one core truth is emphasized again and again. The Dharma is not reserved only for human beings, nor is it limited to social classes or intellectual elites. It is a path open to all sentient beings. This is vividly illustrated in Southeast Asian folk tales, where people believe that even waiting only for the right conditions to bloom. In the cultural context of Southeast Asia, the carp listening to the Dharma is more than a legend. It reflects a vision of compassion and equality. There are no absolute boundaries between humans and other beings. This perspective contrasts sharply with many ancient traditions that placed humans at the center and regarded other creatures only as tools or resources. Here, the carp is honored as a sentient being capable of empathy, capable of receiving the light of wisdom. This widens the essential meaning of the Dharma all beings possess. Buddha nature, the pure and enlightened essence that is already within. Buddha nature is not obscured by outward appearance. Whether one is a fish, a bird, an animal, or a human, it is never lost. Social boundaries, even the species barrier. It is the language of the heart, and any heart that becomes still enough can receive it. If we observe carefully, the image of the carp carries another layer of meaning. A fish usually lives confined to the waters, yet when it rises to the surface to listen, it breaks through its limits and leaves behind what is familiar. This is the very journey of awakening, daring to step outside the comfort zone, lifting one's head to embrace a new horizon. In East Asian culture, the carp is tied to the motif of leaping the dragon gate and transforming into a dragon, a symbol of transformation from the mundane to the transcendent. When reimagined in the Buddhist context, the carp is not only a symbol of perseverance or good fortune. Temples in Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia often depict the carp listening to the Dharma on their murals, reminding practitioners that even when they feel limited or inadequate, the light of awakening. Discrimination. When the Buddha said that all beings can receive the Dharma, he also opened a door for us to see the world with equal eyes. Instead of viewing animals as mere tools or food, we begin to see them as fellow travelers on the river of samsara. If a carp can listen to the Dharma and awaken, how could we treat it with indifference or cruelty? When a symbol is lived within culture, it seeps into everyday life. People along the Mekong tell of how, after the legend of the carp listening to the Dharma spread, they gradually formed the custom of not fishing in sacred stretches of the river. This faith inspired them to treat the river with reverence and the fish with respect. Here, the Dharma is no longer confined to temples. It has permeated daily life, transforming how people relate to nature itself. For modern practitioners, the carp listening to the Dharma can be understood as a metaphor for our own lives. In the restless currents of existence, enlightenment has never abandoned us. It has only been hidden beneath the waves of craving and ignorance. The beauty of this symbol lies in its simplicity. It does not require complex philosophy or elaborate systems of thought. Just the image of a fish lifting its head, listening, and then disappearing peacefully. That alone is enough to move hearts. Behind that simplicity lies a profound message. Awakening is not distant. It can begin with a single moment of listening in silence. Thus, the carp listening to the Dharma is not just a story for entertainment. It is a reminder to each of every breath of life lies the seed of awakening. And in nurturing that awareness, we are not only honoring life, but also nurturing our own Buddha nature. In conclusion, the symbol of the carp, listening to the Dharma in Southeast Asian tradition, has moved far beyond the boundaries of folklore. It has become a mirror reflecting the spirit of equality and compassion in Buddhism. It reminds us that every being has the potential for enlightenment. No one is left behind. No one is too small to touch the light of liberation. And it is this faith that has, is, and will continue to sustain the spiritual journey of countless beings, from the banks of the Mekong to the hearts of seekers all around the world. 7.3. Spiritual equality and human rights in modern society. When we look deeply into the story of the carp listening to the Dharma, a seemingly simple symbol carries a universal message. Every being has the potential for enlightenment. More than a legend, this story opens a door for reflection on spiritual equality and how this value can be applied in modern life. Today, equality is not only about legal or political rights, but also about recognizing that every individual, regardless of background, status, or way of life, possesses an inner potential to develop morally, intellectually, and spiritually. The Southeast Asian symbol of the carp. Reconsider how society treats those seen as vulnerable or marginalized: children, the elderly, people with disabilities, and minority groups. Each person, like the carp in the story, carries a hidden potential that can flourish under the right conditions. This insight is directly linked to the concept of human rights. Human rights are not just legal entitlements. They are the recognition that every person has inherent value and deserves respect. Understanding that all beings can attain enlightenment also reminds us that oppression, discrimination, or exclusion contradicts the very essence of life. Spiritual equality, as symbolized by the carp listening to the Dharma, forms a deep foundation for building a society that respects human rights. Only when all beings are acknowledged and valued can society truly be fair and humane. In the context of globalization, folktales like the carp listening to the Dharma remind us that the values of human rights and spiritual equality extend beyond national borders. As cultures intersect and people meet across continents, we need a vision of inclusivity. Every individual, whether in Asia, education. In many modern societies, access to knowledge and skills is still influenced by wealth, social status, or gender. However, the message from the carp listening to the Dharma emphasizes that awakening and wisdom are not limited by external circumstances. A truly civilized society is one where everyone has the opportunity to develop both intellect and spirit, where personal growth is not. It is the foundation that makes humanitarian policies and actions effective and sustainable. Moreover, the story conveys a strong lesson about social responsibility. Recognizing that all beings have the potential for enlightenment also brings the responsibility to create fair environments and nurture growth for all. This extends to areas such as child rights, gender equality, environmental stewardship, and care for other living beings. Every compassionate action, every fair policy, reflects the spirit taught by the carp. Honor and nurture the innate potential in every life. Respect for all living beings. When today's youth hear this story, they not only learn about ethics and compassion, but also develop an understanding of equality, human rights, and social responsibility, preparing them for a more harmonious world. Ultimately, the most important lesson drawn from this connection is that awakening and human rights go hand in hand with fairness and respect for all beings. Spiritual equality inspires people to continually improve themselves while building societies that are respectful, compassionate, and humane. The story of the carp listening to the Dharma, depicting a small being with great potential, reminds us that every human and every living creature deserves the opportunity to grow, develop, and move closer to the light of awakening. From this awareness, humanity can cultivate a civilization founded on compassion, wisdom, and respect for the intrinsic value of all beings, rising above prejudice, discrimination, and injustice. Part 8. Mustard Seed, the story of Kisa Gotami in Sri Lanka. Before diving into each specific story, let us imagine a vivid and powerful scene, the anguish of loss that leaves a person exhausted, trapped in life, and seeking liberation through subtle yet profound teachings. Buddhist folktales, such as the story of Kisa Gotami in Sri Lanka, do more than recount extraordinary events or heroic figures. They open a door to understanding the nature of suffering, the transformation of pain, and the wisdom within. This section will take viewers on an emotional journey where each day was filled with connection, the laughter of her child, and peaceful moments that seemed endless. Yet fate struck cruelly when her beloved child fell gravely ill and passed away, leaving Kisa Gotami engulfed in emptiness, despair, and overwhelming grief. Her sorrow was not fleeting. It was an abyss consuming every moment, turning the world around her into a gray landscape of mourning and loneliness. In her utmost despair, Kisa Gotami sought a remedy, a miracle to bring her child back. She traveled from village to village, knocking on every door, pleading for help. But no one could fulfill her impossible wish, to return her child from the realm of the dead. The villagers looked at her with pity, yet they could not change the harsh reality. Kisa Gotami's suffering was not just the loss of her child. It was a direct confrontation with death, helplessness, and the finite nature of life, experiences every human must face. During her quest for a cure, to recognize the fundamental truth of life, all beings must experience birth, aging, illness, and death. Only by understanding and accepting this truth can pain be transformed. The Buddha instructed Kisa Gotami to collect mustard seeds from every household in the village, requesting a full handful from each family. Yet she realized that no household could provide her with a mustard seed, for no one is spared from death. Through this seemingly simple challenge, Kisa Gotami came to understand the impermanence of all lives, and her grief became a lesson in mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. This story is not merely a legend about loss and enlightenment. It is a powerful symbol of the universal human experience of pain. Every person must confront death, loss, and the capacity to heal. By learning to let go and accept reality, she not only found peace for herself, but also opened her heart to love and empathize with the suffering of others, becoming a living example of compassion radiating into the community. In the modern context, Kisa Gotami's story retains its educational and humanistic value. Mothers, families, or anyone who has experienced loss can see themselves reflected in her grief. The tale reminds us that no one passes through suffering alone, and that sharing, understanding, and nurturing compassion are ways to transform pain into inner strength. In today's world, where people are often swept away by work, responsibilities, and pressures, learning from Kisa Gotami's story helps us pause, confront our grief, compassion, and courage to face reality. Understanding this allows individuals to find inner freedom, rise above despair, and build a more meaningful life. As Kisa Gotami experienced, suffering to joy, from loss to love, all are part of the same process of spiritual transformation. It also demonstrates that Buddhist folk traditions, with specific characters and settings, can touch the hearts of modern people across nations and cultures because pain and the desire for happiness are universal. 8.2. The Lesson of Impermanence. Death spares no one. In the depth of human experience, no one can escape the cycle of birth and death. This is a truth that Buddhist folktales remind us of gently, yet powerfully. Death is inevitable. Impermanence is an unchanging law. Impermanence that envelopes all living beings, from the smallest creatures to the most powerful humans, from moments of ultimate joy to unforeseen calamities. Through this journey, Kisa Gotami realizes that her suffering does not belong solely to her or to her deceased son. It is a universal experience of all beings. She comes to understand that any effort to resist this reality only leads to more suffering. This truth is symbolized in each mustard seed she seeks. No household in the village can provide one because no one escapes death. Each mustard seed represents a life. And the emptiness she encounters when she cannot gather enough seeds serves as a reminder of the impermanence of all beings. This awareness is the first step toward transforming grief into wisdom and compassion, for when we understand that loss is natural, we are no longer bound by despair or resentment. The story also offers an international perspective. The images of families, villages, and human lives, although set in a specific place like Sri Lanka, reflect a universal experience. Everyone will face death, regardless of wealth, culture, or social status. The lesson of impermanence is not an abstract philosophy, but a vivid reminder to cherish every moment, cultivate empathy, and avoid becoming entangled in fleeting desires and attachments. In the modern context, where the world moves at a dizzying pace, people often forget the fragility of life. The story reminds us that impermanence is not something to fear, but an opportunity to live more mindfully. Appreciate the present and develop emotional intelligence to face pain and loss with equanimity. Practicing mindfulness and recognizing that every moment is finite helps us build resilience, patience, and compassion not only for ourselves, but for the broader community. The greatest lesson from this section is that death and loss are indiscriminate and spare no one. An awareness of impermanence forms the foundation of spiritual maturity. By accepting this, personal grief becomes an opportunity to learn to let go, to cherish what remains, and to cultivate an open heart toward all living beings. As Kisa Gotami experienced, realizing impermanence does not mean denying emotions. It is a profound understanding of life's nature, allowing one to nurture wisdom, compassion, and courage. The story of impermanence in Buddhist folktales reminds us that suffering, loss, and death are inevitable parts of life. Yet this understanding enables us to transform suffering into a path toward liberation, enlightenment, and compassion. It encourages modern humans to confront reality directly, without avoidance, and from this, build a richer and more meaningful spiritual life. 8.3. Healing in modern life. Letting go of suffering to continue living. In modern life, people often face pressures, losses, and suffering in isolation. Through the story of Kisa Gotami, the impermanence of all lives, she not only found peace for herself, but also opened her heart to understand and empathize with the suffering of others. In doing so, her compassion spread and became a learning to love oneself and others. In the story, as Kisa Gotami searched for mustard seeds, she realized that every family experiences death and loss, understanding that suffering is universal. This awareness prevents us from feeling alone in our grief and teaches us to share and empathize with others. In a modern society where people are often absorbed in work and responsibilities, the story reminds us that pausing, observing our pain, and accepting it is the first step toward healing and enlightenment. The most important lesson from Kisa Gotami's story is that suffering is not the end, but the beginning of a deeper journey of love, compassion, and understanding. By learning to let go of pain, individuals find inner freedom, rise above despair, and build a more meaningful life. This message extends beyond the individual to the wider community. When each person learns to heal and release suffering, the power of compassion and empathy spreads, creating a more connected and humane society. In the context of globalization, Kisa Gotami's story carries timeless and universal value. Everywhere, across all cultures, humans experience loss and suffering. The message of letting go and healing becomes a common language, guiding people to face reality, nurture compassion, and develop emotional intelligence. Applying this story in modern life teaches us that letting go does not mean losing. Rather, it is a transformation that allows us to continue living fully, consciously, and with humanity. Kisa Gotami's story demonstrates that although loss and suffering are inevitable parts of life, they are not the end, but an opportunity for growth, healing, and the cultivation of compassion. By realizing impermanence, learning to let go, and nurturing compassion, each person can continue living a meaningful life, cherishing the past while opening their heart to the future. In today's fast-changing world, where people are easily swept into the currents of impermanence, the lesson of healing and letting go from Kisa Gotami remains invaluable, serving as a guide for spiritual life, helping us live fully, wisely, and peacefully. Part 9. Connection from ancient stories to today's life. Before diving into the specific stories, imagine a grand picture. For thousands of years, Buddhist folk tales have been passed down through generations, from India, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia to Japan and Tibet. Each story carries subtle messages about life, suffering, and the ability to transform pain. When we listen, it is not merely. As Buddhist folk tales were retold from village to village, from country to country, a clear common thread emerges. Each story, whether it is Kisa Gotami in Sri Lanka, the honey-giving monkey, or the humble wooden bowl of a Japanese Zen master, embodies profound values of compassion, wisdom, and an understanding of impermanence. Compassion, in all these stories, is not merely specific acts of helping others, but an attitude of empathy and understanding toward all sentient beings. It extends beyond family or local community to the whole world, where humans share in each other's suffering. Sincere heart, or Kisa Gotami learning to accept loss and opening her heart to the suffering of others. Wisdom in these tales is not just abstract knowledge or intellectual insight, but lived wisdom, the ability to see the true nature of all things, understand karma, recognize impermanence, and apply this awareness in everyday life. The Buddha teaches that all beings must go through birth, aging, sickness, and death. Understanding this frees us from being trapped in suffering and allows us to act in the world with compassion and mindfulness. In folk traditions, through stories of loss, sacrifice, or constant change, listeners recognize that everything in life is temporary. Life, possessions, love, even health, nothing is permanent. Awareness of impermanence does not incite fear. Rather, it opens the possibility to live fully, to cherish the present, and to act with compassion and wisdom. It also helps us release attachment, anger, and suffering, because understanding that everything changes teaches us how to let go without harm. This common thread is also a bridge between the past and the present. Even if you live in a modern city, become the strength to live fully. Beyond theory, Buddhist folk tales also show how to apply this common thread in practice, from everyday actions to major life decisions. In the face of suffering, we can practice compassion to share burdens. In conflicts, wisdom guides us to wise solutions. In change and loss, understanding impermanence allows letting go without despair. These seemingly ancient lessons come alive in a globalized society, where people still face suffering but have opportunities to cultivate folk wisdom into compassion and inner peace. The common denominators of compassion, wisdom, and impermanence demonstrate the enduring vitality of the Buddhist folk tradition. They transcend time and borders, connecting all people through universal values. Understanding and practicing these three elements not only links us to the past, but also opens a future where spiritual and social life becomes whole, humane, and meaningful. These ancient stories, therefore, are not merely nostalgic. They serve as guiding lights for living today, helping each person find resonance between history, spirituality, and personal experience. 9.2. Why these stories transcend time and borders. Buddhist folk tales, whether originating from villages in India, Sri Lanka, Japan, or the valleys of Tibet, have the remarkable ability to endure across time and space. This is not merely because of their dramatic plots or unique characters, but because of the core values they convey, lessons on compassion, wisdom, and impermanence, which are universal, surpassing differences in culture, history, or geography. When someone in Europe, North America, or Southeast Asia reads or hears these stories, they do not need to understand the specific language or context. They can immediately empathize with the emotions, suffering, joy, and reflections experienced by the characters. These stories persist because of their power to connect human emotions. For instance, the story of Kisa Gotami in Sri Lanka, mourning the loss of her child, or the honey-offering monkey in India, both capture universal states of mind: love, loss, sacrifice, honesty. These experiences are not isolated or strange. In modern society, where people often feel lonely amid the busyness and pressures of life, these stories remind us that suffering, the desire for happiness, and compassion are shared human experiences. Another reason these tales transcend borders is the simplicity yet profundity of their storytelling. Characters may be humans, animals, or supernatural beings, but their actions and decisions reflect universal values. They do not require complex philosophical language or lengthy arguments. A single act of offering, a sacrifice, village in Western or Eastern cultures. The timeless nature of these stories is also connected to the constancy of human nature. The suffering, joy, desires, and conflicts that characters experience remain present in modern human life. Kisa Gotami's loss long ago is no different from a mother's loss today. The compassionate actions of a monkey or an elephant reflect how we might act toward friends, family, or colleagues. Therefore, ancient stories remain vivid and never outdated, because the inner experiences of humans do not change significantly across generations. Moreover, they invite reflection instead of imposing doctrine. When a story crosses cultural boundaries and is retold in another culture, the essence of its lesson remains intact, even if the narrative form, the humble wooden bowl, or the honey-offering monkey, leave a strong impression and are easy to remember, passed down through generations. Paired with moral and spiritual messages, they become vivid, educational tools that are not limited by language or borders. In summary, Buddhist folktales transcend time and borders for three main reasons: the universality of human emotions and experiences, the simplicity yet profundity of their storytelling, and their ability to connect listeners' inner lives with fundamental spiritual values. They exist not only as old stories to be retold, but as guiding lights, illuminating human hearts wherever and whenever they are heard. No matter how modern life changes, their value remains, reminding us that compassion, wisdom, and awareness of not necessarily start with grand rituals or long meditation retreats, but can arise from simple experiences, a story told in a village, or lessons drawn from everyday life. Stories that may seem simple, about the self-sacrificing rabbit, the compassionate elephant, or Kisa Gotami, the mother who lost her child, contain profound truths about compassion, wisdom, impermanence, and the capacity to heal the heart. They are not mere abstract teachings, but vivid illustrations that help the listener or reader feel and understand spiritual values often overlooked in modern life. Thus, the path to enlightenment is not distant or reserved solely for ascetics. It can begin within a family, when a child learns to share and forgive, in a community, when people learn to listen and empathize, or within one's own mind, when we confront loss, pain, and learn to let go, accepting impermanence to find peace. Each story, whether about animals or humans, opens a door to, small or large, contributes to our understanding and cultivation of compassion. This is why Buddhist folk tales transcend borders, time, and culture. They speak directly to the universal inner experiences of human beings, where suffering, love, and the desire for happiness never go out of date. In today's fast-paced world, where people are consumed by work, responsibilities, and pressures, by applying these lessons, we not only heal ourselves but also spread positive energy, helping build a more caring, empathetic, and connected community. Let these Buddhist folk tales guide you on the path to enlightenment. Begin with a simple story, an image, a moment of awareness, and step by step, your heart will open to deeper understanding, steady compassion, and the ability to heal. Guide your inner journey, nurturing compassion, wisdom, and lasting peace. Enlightenment is not a distant destination, but exists in each moment you recognize the connection between yourself and the. Part 6. The Wooden Bowl, Folk Wisdom from Japan. In the treasury of Japanese wisdom, one does not only find lofty philosophies hidden in Buddhist scriptures or ancient texts. Sometimes, from the most ordinary of objects, one can step into the depth of human consciousness. A simple wooden bowl, rustic and unadorned, can become a gateway into the world of contentment, gratitude, and letting go. This section unfolds stories surrounding the image of the wooden bowl in Japanese culture and spirituality, where humility and wisdom intertwine, illuminating timeless values. 6.1. The Monk's Humble Bowl, a Lesson Beyond Time. In Hyogo Prefecture, toward the end of the Edo period, there stood a small temple named Myazenji, nestled beneath the silent shade of pine forests. Eloquent teachings, but for his very